So just like we did in the last video, this is solving one-step equations, except for now we're going to be multiplying and dividing. So if you have 6x equals negative 48, so if we have 6x equals negative 48, notice the 6 and this x are right next to each other. So something to remember about a number and a variable right next to each other like that, where they're right next to each other, it's actually multiplication. In a minute we're going to do one that shows division, but when a number and a variable are right next to each other like that, that means that they're multiplying. So the opposite of multiply is divide. So if it's 6 times x, or if there were 6 x's, you could divide it by 6 and divide it by 6. In a calculator, and I'm just going to use the one on my phone, if we have 6 and we divide by 6, it's just 1. So you'll see me mark it out like this. So we would be left with just a single x. Bring down your equal sign. And then don't forget that negative on that 48. So you're going to see me do 48, and then you're going to hit the negative button wherever it's at on your calculator, and then divide by 6. And you get negative 8. So negative 8 would be your answer, but again, we're going to check that to make sure that that's actually true. So I'm going to try to find a different color, and I'm not finding one, so this one's going to look like black, but it's not actually black. So I'm going to plug it in, and we would do 6 times negative 8 equals negative 48, and we're going to see if that's true. So 6 times 8, but it's a negative 8, so hit the negative button, equals negative 48, which equals negative 48. Or remember, it's 6x, or 6 of the same thing, so you could put 6 x's, or negative 8, negative 8, negative 8, oh that's a terrible 8, negative 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if there are 6 negative 8's, so negative 8, minus 8, minus 8, minus 8, minus 8, minus 8, you get negative 48. So that's just me showing you why 6x means the same thing as multiply, but it's just saying that there are 6 of them, so it's 6 times x, which the opposite of multiply is divide. Okay, so hopefully that didn't confuse you. I was just trying to prove it. Sometimes some students like things being proved to them. Some students are just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. Okay, now this one, negative 2x equals 24. This is always the one that messes people up the most. Notice, it's negative 2 right next to a variable. It is not, oops, that has writing on it. It is not negative 2 plus x. It's not 2 minus x. It is a negative 2 right next to the variable. So when you have a number and a variable, just like up here, a number and a variable right next to each other, it means multiply. The only thing on this one is we are multiplying by a negative 2. So it would be negative 2 times x, which the opposite of multiply we have said is divide. So I would divide by negative 2 and divide by negative 2. A negative divided by a negative cancels, or a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 2 divided by 2 becomes 1, so we would be left with x. Bring down your equals, and then we have 24 divided by negative 2. So notice the 24 is positive, divided by 2, and it's a negative 2, so that would be negative 12. That's a terrible negative 12, but let's try that out. So if we have negative 2 times negative 12 equals 24. Let's see if that's true. So 2, which is negative, times, notice that's times negative 12. Oops, see, and then I hit the wrong thing. So 2 negative times 12, I hit the minus, is my problem. You need to hit that negative. Gives you 24. So that would be 24 equals 24, which works out. Now, something I do want to write as a reminder, a positive, this one right here, a positive times a negative gave us a negative. Or a positive times a negative equals a negative number. So the way I remember it is if they're different, when you multiply, it's a negative number. This one was a negative times a negative gives you a positive, or a negative times a negative equals positive. We're going to write the last possibility. So a positive times a positive. So a positive number times a positive number gives you a positive answer. Or a positive times a positive equals a positive. So you might want to highlight that. So if they're the same, you get a positive answer. If they're the same, let me do it, sorry. You get a positive answer. And if you have one that's positive, one that's negative, you get a negative answer. So if they're different, you get a negative answer. If they're the same, you get the positive answer. And I should have probably made that green, but... Okay, so we have one more example that I want to do. I was just showing you a negative times a negative gives you a positive answer. Okay, so the next one. If we have 12 equals x over 3. Again, pay attention to where your variable is. On the last assignment, or on the last set of notes, I saw that people were trying to move this, like this number over, but you're always wanting to get the x by itself. So in order to get this x by itself, we need to get rid of this 3. So notice this is a fraction. It's x, we read it as x divided by 3. Well, the opposite of dividing is multiplying, just like we did up here. So you would multiply by 3. Some people might remember back to when you divide that you flip the fraction, but I'm not going to write that out because not very many people remember that step. I mean, some people do, but I think for me this is the way that makes the most sense, and it seems like in years past that's what makes the most sense to students. So if it's x divided by 3, we're going to multiply by 3. And again, if we put that over 1, 3 over 3 cancels and becomes 1. Just like 2 over 2 here became 1, 3 over 3 cancels. And I can show you that in my calculator. So if we have 3 divided by 3, it becomes 1x. So you're just left with the single x. Bring down the equals. And we need to remember to do this step over here. So multiply by 3. So that would be 3 times 12, which equals 36. And that would be our answer, but let's check to make sure that that works. So let's plug that 36 in. So it'd be 12 equals 36 divided by 3. 36 divided by 3 is 12, and 12 equals 12. So again, we are just doing the opposite. So this one, it was dividing, so we multiply. This one was multiplying, so we divided. The ones that we did in the last set of notes, it was adding, so we subtracted. It was subtracting, so we added. So you're just are always, always, always going to do the opposite of what's happening. So that's why on this one, oops, I almost ripped my paper, we multiplied because it's the inverse of dividing.